Why do people continually misrepresent early Christian movements that were not victorious from early church fathers? It seems people can't stop quoting the likes of Irenaeus, despite the fact we have the Nag Hammadi libraries now, and plenty of scholars from the likes of G.R.S. Mead and Elaine Pagels. Why do we continue to accept the likes of Irenaeus as valid commentaries on Gnosticism when we know those are unlikely to be truthful representatives? Andrew Jones.
Actually, I think it's a bit different from that, because we wondered if Irenaeus was telling the truth about the Gnostics, because he goes into great detail about them and what they believed. He ridicules them, but was he misrepresenting them? It turns out apparently not. Because once we found the Nag Hammadi texts, we realized, Irenaeus was summarizing the Apocryphon of John, or the Hypostasis of the Archons. So he apparently, comparing the two, he did not misrepresent them. He just thought that they're wrong and they must have made it up. They were just winging it. We know what the real truth is, because our group was founded by the people who actually heard Jesus teach. These Gnostics, who knows what the heck they're where they're getting it, probably just hallucinating. And of course, the problem with that is twofold. The idea of an apostolic succession seems to be designed as an apologetic for a particular leadership group. And just as Eusebius takes a group of names of Roman bishops who must have been a council of the elders, and reshapes it so that it's a chain of succession, one monarchical bishop or pope after the other. In the same way, it's the apostolic succession thing seems suspicious. I mean, it might be true, but it's not clear, especially since it seems to be based partly on the notion that the apostles fanned out across the known world, which I think is simply based on a misunderstanding of the end of Matthew with the Great Commission. When it says, go into all the world, it's really talking about the readers in the Antioch church who were Jewish Christians, who spread the gospel that Paul in Galatians is against. He says, don't let anybody tell you got to be circumcised and all that. He's just using the 12 as to stand for them. And in much the same way in missionary conventions, the apostles are used as symbols of the mission charge. But otherwise, why is Paul called the apostle to the Gentiles? Why in Galatians does it say that he and Peter divided up the world, like the old wartime cartoons of Hitler and Mussolini carving up the earth, who's going to get what? And Peter's going to go to the circumcised in the diaspora, presumably, and Paul is going to go with with the pagans, trying to convert them into God-fearers, the pious Gentiles who attended synagogue. And why the apostle to the Gentiles or the nations, if all of them were apostles to the nations? It's just, again, another harmonizing thing to pretend there was more unity than there was. And another problem with this is that we don't get any information, in quotes, about the 12 until 2nd or 3rd century apocryphal Acts of the Apostles, which are completely fanciful and obviously legendary. I mean, there's no chance that they really record the stuff. And why don't we know any more about him? We only have any idea of Peter because he's used as a Dr. Watson character, like I say, Holmes, how did you realize that little Sally was the Shropshire slasher? Elementary, my dear Watson. And he explains it for the benefit of the reader, obviously. Well, that's where Jimmy Olsen came from. He was never in the comics until they had Bud Collyer playing Superman on the radio, and they couldn't have word balloons, and they had to have Superman explain things, so he's got this red-headed, freckled reporter kid, Jimmy Olsen. Superman, how'd you do this? Well, Jimmy, it was pretty... I mean, that's what Peter is in the Gospels. He's just the straight man. Is this based on, I mean, it can't be based on history because of what it is, a literary device. So what do we really know about these guys? Virtually nothing. And that may be because they're a fiction. So let's see, have I lost track of the question completely? Was this the one about...
Gnostics.
Yeah, Gnostics, right. Last piece of the puzzle, the Gnostics made the same sort of claims for apostolic succession. And Basilides, one of the great Gnostic teachers of the 2nd century, he said, well, I didn't make this up. I learned this from Glaucius, who was the amanuensis, the secretary for Peter. And Valentinus, the even greater Gnostic teacher, said that, well, I didn't make this stuff up. I got it from Theodos, who was the amanuensis of Paul. It's very much like saying that Mark got it from Peter, not Jesus directly, but not bad. Or that Luke must have gotten his teaching from Paul, who got it from Jesus. It's like everybody played this game.
So the waters were extremely muddy, and it's so muddy that honestly, you either have to be gullible enough to just accept the statements by one side or the other, or say maybe both sides are lying and there might have been a pre-existing movement that for all we know, we don't even know. So best to be agnostic on this position.
Yeah, it's not like it's better that it be one way or the other. It's just that the evidence is fragmentary and leans in too many contradictory directions. The great modern historian Collingwood said that you have to sift out your data and realize that there is a history of events, and that's what you're trying to find out, but there's also a history of propaganda. So things that seem like information perhaps did not start out that way. Somebody had an axe to grind. As my friend, the author Richard Tierney says, they were grinding the axe of the apostles, and that's what I think happened.